Hey Charlene, how you doing today? Good to see you.
I'm well, Kayo. Thank you. You too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Happy New
yeah.
Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I hope you had a great celebration over the festive period.
I certainly did. Thank you. Went to
Excellent.
Germany where it was nice and Christmassy.
Fantastic, fantastic. Love to hear it. Yeah, so let the viewers know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, Charlene.
Sure. So, first, thanks for this opportunity to have this conversation. I really appreciate it.
I really,
Um, I am Australian, first and foremost, and Spanish as well. I got my Spanish citizenship here, and I work as a relationship and intimacy coach and a wedding celebrant. So it's a beautiful combination of things. And how did I get to it? I think probably I actually saw some of your other interviews with some clients, and it seems that several of us have had a similar experience. That being that relationship coaching kind of found me. So growing up when I was younger, I was often approached by older friends asking for advice about relationships, which was very weird for me as a young adult. But yeah, so people would come to me for advice, and I love to listen to people and think about relationships and talk about them. And then when I started having my own, I discovered some of the challenges that there were. And I had one particularly important relationship that I had that went really wrong, basically. And I tried to get my partner to come to get help with me for the relationship because I was really miserable. We were fighting all the time and said horrible things to each other that couldn't be unsaid. And his response to my attempt to get support was, "There's nothing wrong with this relationship. You're the one with the problem," which was super interesting for me. And it felt kind of a little bit absurd that he said that because I couldn't see how those things were different. And so whilst his perspective wasn't really much help in saving our relationship because he really wasn't willing to be responsible for anything that was happening. I did discover through going to counseling myself at the time, through subsequent relationships, and through finding relationship coaching through my life coaching course that I did. I discovered that there is actually a lot that one person can do in a relation for a relationship, and one person can make a big difference, but it does require both people to really have a happy, fulfilling relationship. And so I've learned of the importance of what one person can do, but both people need to change and want growth for their relationship, and more importantly, that both people need to want each other to be happy and fulfilled in order for that to be successful in a relationship. And so that's what I do for couples. I help them discover what it is um, that they need to do and have to have their needs met in the relationship, both by themselves and their partner, and to discover the ways that they can have their relationship truly reflect the love that they have for each other. So, and then as a wedding celebrant, I love being at the start of couples' relationships and then offer my services as a coach because it's never too early to start preparing your relationship for a healthy future. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you for sharing that because, like, we all definitely do have different struggles that we go through in different relationships that we have, and we navigate through those to get to where we are now. And as you mentioned, it led you to wanting to get into relationship coaching, which a lot of people in the field, it's upon their own experiences that lead them to that place as well. So when you speak about your previous relationship and the struggles that you had. You was talking about like there was a lot of conflict and words being said and that couldn't be taken back and all of that. Now that you have some hindsight on the situation, what would you say the root of those this arguments were, and where did it all come from, in your opinion?
oh, I love that. I think what I've learned a lot is that there are usually patterns of communication. And I was actually listening to Esther Perel recently. For those who don't know, she's a very well known international relationship therapist and a researcher. And she said when she is working with people, she's not interested in the content of their arguments. She's much more interested in the way that people argue, or what it is that what the patterns are. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned through everything, and if I look back, it's to do with wanting my own needs, or my partner wanting their own needs to be more important than the relationship sometimes, because often when you put the relationship first and you look at what needs does the relationship have, the irony is that ironically you both get your needs met when you do that. But when I'm trying to fight to be heard, to be right, to have my needs met over the other person's needs, then that creates a problem. And I think also that we forget that a relationship is about working together as a team. And I often come up with I talk about people in relationships that do their relationship as if they're in a boxing ring. And so you're at either ends of the boxing ring, and you come in and you have your fight and then go back to your corners. And I think a healthy relationship, and from my experience, a healthy relationship is more like a doubles match. So you're on the same team. And so even if it's a problem that one of you is experiencing with the other, when you come together as a team, that makes a really big difference. And helps you get out of the emotion of it all to look at how you can resolve that. So that's a couple of things that I would say.
Yeah. So would you say that it was coming from a place of wanting to take from each other rather than wanting to give to each other? Like when you talk about like not being on the same team, like wanting to be the victor of the situation and have one over the other rather than actually looking at how you can provide and give to each other instead.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't think it's not always, well, it's generally not an active thought for people. But I think most people are driven by this idea that we do get into relationships, I believe, intimate relationships, because they augment who we are, or they can augment who we are. And we sometimes make the mistake of getting into relationships thinking that it's so the other person will meet our needs. And so then when they're not meeting our needs, they're the problem. And I think, so yes, so there's something in that my needs become your responsibility. And so learning how we can be responsible for what we want to feel and have our partner augment that and get their support for helping us meet our needs is what makes the difference. And so I think it does become about, you use the word the victor over a conversation, the issues. And yeah, I guess I've not really ever used that term before, but there is a thing of needing to be right. And we need to be right for fundamental reasons. It's not a terrible thing that we need to be right. It's just that that's what gives us certainty. And everybody needs a certain amount of certainty, and being right is one way of meeting that need. However, when you're being right, there's not a lot of room for all the other things that we also need, like connection and love and feeling valued and important to that person. And when we value being right and certain over all of those other things, then it's not going to lead to much of that doubles tennis match. So,
Right. You know, there are a lot of people like when they come out of a relationship that they put their all into, and it didn't work out, they tend to close off and stay like that for a period of time. What was it like for you after that relationship ended, and what was your journey like before you were able to start mixing again and being able to be in a relationship again?
It's different for everybody, and I'm not very as a coach, my role, I see my role as supporting people to discover what it is that they need for themselves. So whatever I'm about to say for what worked for me is not something to reproduce for anybody specifically, and I think that's really important. What happened for me was we had a business together as well, so there was extra complication, and so I spent 2 years being very upset trying to get my money back, actually, from this relationship. So there was a lot of pain and hurt, and a lot of feeling, broken trust and so many things around that. And I spent a lot of time feeling very angry and determined to get my money back. And I think what happened for me was that I needed to let go. And so I woke up, I remember waking up one day. I actually moved to the other side of the country when the relationship broke up. And I remember having this experience of waking up one day and just feeling so tired, of feeling angry and hurt and resentful, and realizing that the only person that was suffering, well, I knew that he was suffering in his own way. He moved on, got another relationship, but I knew that he was suffering too. But for me, it was the suffering was I was the only one hurting from my own pain. So I made the decision to let go of the business, let go of trying to get my money back, and I started that healing process. And it happened quite quickly for me after that. And what's beautiful about the story of this is that we ended up, by letting go on that, we were able to reconnect. And 10 years later, he apologized for the way he'd been. And, so lots of beautiful things have come out of that. And we're in contact on each other's birthdays now, 20 years later. So that's really lovely. But I think it took me a while to get into another relationship, but it wasn't because of what had happened for us. It was more for me. I was able to let that go, and in doing that, I was free to explore what I wanted in my next relationship, which just took a little bit longer to find. So.
Right. Yeah, I know you mentioned speaking about like letting go being a personal thing in your journey, but I will go as far as to say that letting go is a universal way of healing, like for everybody. Like, because regardless of the situation, when we hold on to it for too long or too tightly, it can affect us internally in a long period of time. So that letting go, I would say, is essential for people to understand. Yeah, so thank you for that explanation as well. Now, when we look at like people, like you said, they have a situation in their relationship. In your case, it was like you was fighting for the financials because you had a business together. Some people, they tend to now focus on their business because they have like not had success in their relationship, but they couldn't control that, but they were more able to control their professional life, and they kind of immerse themselves into their business, so to speak. But that's to the detriment of them being able to mix with people again and find a relationship again because they neglect it for so long. Like in your case, you said it was after a period of time that you were able to do that again. But for people in that situation that are focusing so heavily on their professional life, how can they start to open up again and not just be looking at their professional life, but open up to their intimate side as well?
It's a big question to answer, but to break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces, I think that recognizing that intimate relationships are part of, for most people, and again, I'm not going to make a general judgment for everybody. Some people feel completely certain that they are not interested in relationships. I usually think that means that there's some hurt that's unresolved, but some people are very clear that's not what they want. But when people, I think I think it's our human nature to want to have connection with one person, whether that's for a lifetime or for a period of time, but somebody that we can feel sort of intimate with and deeply connected to. And so some of it is recognizing the value that intimate relationships can bring, which can be hard when there's a lot of hurt that you have to work through. But beginning with that fundamental premise, it's a premise that we all need that love and connection and intimacy and safety and trust within a relationship. And I think then there is, what is it that I get out of my work that is meeting some deep needs, but preventing me from having the kind of intimacy that I want. What I mean by that is, and this is very common, this works, it's not a sex thing, but the sort of masculine energy often enjoys getting being work because they usually have a lot of significance and value and respect at work. They get a lot of certainty out of their work. There's a lot of excitement and variety, depending on the kind of job you have, of course, but there's a lot of connection with people. And so I think work can become, it can meet a lot of those needs so that it doesn't feel like, and it's much safer because you can control it, you know how to get good at it. And relationships are really the same. Relationships are something that we can get good at, that we can have skills for, that we can develop an ability with. And so recognizing that work is meeting a lot of needs, but it's not meeting that need for that really intimate, deep connection that you can only get when you're with somebody in an intimate relationship. And so just by recognizing that and then starting to look for what are the small steps that I would want to take to be able to start to build in a relationship as part of as a part of my wheel of life, if you like, to make sure that life is balanced in order to have the sort of fulfillment and satisfaction that an intimate relationship can bring.
Right. Now, you did mention that it's human nature to have an intimate connection with one person. But some people, like they feel like they have a connection with different people, and even more so, like they've had intimate connection with one person before and maybe it didn't work out, or maybe they found that they were still having attractions to others. So in that context, I'm looking at human nature. What are your thoughts on monogamy versus non-monogamy when we look at the fact that people can be attracted to multiple people?
Yeah, and I don't think that excludes what I said necessarily, because I do think some people do manage more than one relationship, and I've known people that do that, and they've done that very successfully. So it's not. I think it's more about the intimacy and having someone or some people that you share those things with, and that you have that kind of connection with. And even in those couples, those people that I know that have had perhaps two partners or multiple partners, there's usually one that's the sort of stable core relationship, and then they get other things from the other person or the other people in their lives. And that's a big balancing act. And some people love to do that, and that's fine. But I think, I don't have a judgment on that, is what I mean. But I still think that there's a level of, even within having multiple partners, it's still a desire to have an intimate or connected relationship with all of them, if that's what it is, different from a friendship, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, people do that. There are some people that have multiple partners because they are challenged by how to have one, or that they think having multiple can make it somehow easier. And that's always a journey and an exploration for any one person to have about whether, what it is what is the need that they're really meeting, and are they meeting those needs for themselves? And if they are with multiple partners, then it's just working out how to make it work so that there's, clarity and honesty and openness and connection in a healthy way.
Uh, yeah, for sure. Now, like whether it's like monogamous or non-monogamous, jealousy can always arise in relationships in general, right? So in a non-monogamous example, it could be, oh, you're spending more time with this other person than you're spending with me. Or in a monogamous situation, it could be, I always notice that you're looking at this person or you're talking to this person. So in these kind of situations, the person that's being accused of things, they start to get frustrated and they don't know how to communicate with their partner or partners, that there's nothing to be jealous about. So in your opinion, how can they communicate this fact that there's nothing to be jealous about, and how can the person or people that are being feeling jealousy start to deal with that emotion?
It's a really good question, Kayo, because I think it's a big one for lots of people. And I think there's several parts to it. And I come back to what I was saying earlier that or a point that I wanted to make, which is that in any relationship, if you really love the person that you're with, there is a desire to want each other's happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction, and that their needs are being met. That's really important. And jealousy is a challenging one, but any emotion, any communication always has several aspects to it. So I always talk about there's how I feel, how I express what it is that I'm feeling, how the other person receives how I feel, how they respond back, and how I receive their reaction and then respond in kind. And so in that process of jealousy, there is needing, first of all, to get underneath what it's really about. And jealousy, can be many things. Maybe there's been mistrust, there's been broken trust before. And if that's the case, then the person who broke that trust needs to understand what it is that their partner needs for that healing process to happen. Maybe that includes a regular apology. Sometimes we think if we've apologized once or 20 times, that should be enough. But, maybe there is more apology that's needed for a longer period of time. And then there is the person who's being jealous, taking responsibility for that experience that they're having, and how to communicate that in a way that creates connection rather than separation. And that's a skill in a way. That's a skill to learn that emotional regulation, and how to look at, what is it that's creating that jealousy, making requests of each other, and setting aside time to have those conversations when the jealousy is not at its peak. So if someone's about to leave the house and the other one starts to feel jealous, that's probably not a great time to be having that conversation. So it would be setting time aside to really talk and learning the art of really listening to each other and finding out what's underneath. Because often with jealousy, and with many emotions, to be honest, there's a lot of defensiveness in communication that comes up, and now they're no longer working together as a team. So having jealousy be that thing that you're working on, the ball that you're hitting together, if you like, so that communication becomes clear, and learning to communicate specifically what actions are happening that is creating that jealousy feeling, learning to calm that down, and for the partner to be willing to find out what does the jealous partner need in order to feel safe, to feel that trust. Because the defensiveness that tends to come up, especially if you feel you've done nothing wrong, then that doesn't help that situation. So it's really important. Communication is absolutely essential in that, and having a calm space to talk about that and truly listen to each other and dive into what's underneath and what you can commit to together to work through that.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned broken trust, and sometimes there is truth to the reason why someone is jealous, because there has been some broken trust. But sometimes there hasn't been any broken trust, and you was mentioning that the partner should try to find out why the other partner is feeling this jealousy. But in the case of there's no broken trust, do you think it's the job of the partner to try to figure out why this other partner is feeling that way, or would you say it's up to the other partner to also play a role in that, or what is your opinion on that?
I think, again, as I say, I think it's both people's responsibility. In any problem that comes up in a relationship, any challenge, any difficulty, any crisis, anything, no matter what it is the job of both people to work it through. We are all individually responsible for how we show up in a relationship and what kind of environment that creates for the relationship. So if jealousy is in the way, then it's not something one person solves. And it's not up to one person to solve it for the other. It requires both people to do it together. Because, for example, if I have a partner that's jealous and gets upset with me, I mean, the only way that I can resolve that is to find out more what's happening for them. What could I do that would help them to feel? Because usually jealousy underneath that is always the feeling of feeling uncertain, whether it's from this relationship or a previous one or several previous relationships. No matter where it comes from, all we can deal with is this moment here. And so being able to have a desire to be curious about what's underneath that jealousy, where it comes from, not so much why they're jealous, because that may or may not be necessary to understand fully, but to understand what does it look like and how can we solve this together? What do you need from me? Not trying to guess what my partner needs because they're jealous, but to have that conversation. You know, I understand you're feeling jealous. Help me understand what happens that creates that experience for you. What can I do in those moments to support you? Sometimes it might be some words that I can say to help calm that feeling, or it might be an action that I can take for them. Or sometimes it's just about other areas of the relationship or other times in the relationship. Maybe it's a regular thing daily that somebody needs to be told, you know, I love you and I'm looking forward to my future with you, what we call future pacing the relationship. Sometimes doing that on a regular basis can be enough to calm that experience, but doing that together is what's so important.
Right. Yeah, excellent, excellent. And in the case of like the trust has been broken, like there has been infidelity in the relationship, do you feel like it can ever be fully patched up, or do you feel like people just tolerate each other from then on, or is there a way to really rebuild that trust in an authentic way, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, anything can be healed if people have the intention and take the actions and take responsibility for that. Does that mean that every relationship is, you know, going to be forever? It may or may not be that, but I know, for example, in my case, the relationships that I've had, there hasn't been infidelity that I'm aware of on any side, but even any healing, I'm still have a relationship with all of my exes that I can have a conversation with them, for example. So it's something that you can create, and I think that's important. So I'm not saying that every relationship has to last, but can things be healed? Completely. There are many relationships where that's been the case. But it does depend on someone's belief system. So if I have a belief that if you cheat on me, that's it, there's no going back from that, then it's unlikely that that person's going to be open to how can we heal that. But if you're both willing to make to be able to work together to rebuild that trust, then absolutely. And I would assert also that most infidelity, not all infidelity, but most infidelity between couples that are in a relationship, there's a reason for it. And being able to have an open and honest conversation about what needs are not being met in the relationship that need to be healed can really go a long way to, number one, preventing that from happening or coming back from that. So yes, I think it's absolutely possible if two people decide. If one says, I'm definitely never forgiving you for that, the likelihood of that being healed is, and it's not going to heal itself. You know, it takes work. So.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it definitely does come down to the level of communication between people to determine the level of trust in any relationship. So that is very, very true. Yeah, so Sharlene, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for everything that you've shared. Where can people find you, find out more about you, and find out more about what you do?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on and for your great questions. I really appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff, so I really appreciate the opportunity. And you can find me, I have on my website, which is sharlenehalbert.com. And then I'm on all of the usual places, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, and what's the other one? Instagram at Sharlene Halbert Coach is where people can find me. And I have a newsletter that people can called my weekly relationship revelations newsletter if people want to find out more and get tips and ideas, and they can find that through jumping on my website. So
Excellent, excellent. And for the viewers, all of that information about her socials will be in the description, so you can contact Sharlene, find out more about her and what she does. Once again, Sharlene, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words before you wrap up?
I would just like to say, because I get a lot of people asking me when is a good time to get support for your relationship, and my answer to that is always, if you've asked the question yesterday. So you don't have to wait till things are broken and difficult and hard. You can start from the very beginning to build the skills that you need to have a future relationship together that really works. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing with speaking to people like myself and having people get to experience what having support for your relationship can look like and feel like. So thank you for the work that you do.
You're very
Appreciate it.
welcome. And thank you once again, Sharlene. And I appreciate you too. Yeah. So have a great evening. Have a great rest of your day now.
Thank you. You too, Kayo. Bye.